Welcome to LMJ English, the place where you find motivational, life-changing stories while improving your English skills. Today, we bring you an unbelievable true story, the journey of Colonel Harland Sanders, the man who created KFC at the age of 65. If you've ever felt like it's too late to achieve success, or that failure defines your future, this story will change your perspective. Colonel Sanders faced poverty, rejection, and over 1,000 failures, yet he built one of the biggest food chains in the world. Stay with us until the end, because this story is not just about fried chicken, it's about perseverance, passion, and proving that success has no age limit. Have you ever felt like a failure? Have you ever looked at your life and thought, maybe I missed my chance? Maybe you're in your 20s, struggling to find direction. Maybe you're in your 40s, still searching for stability. Or maybe you're even older, wondering if it's too late to achieve success. If you've ever felt this way, you're not alone. Many people believe that success has a deadline, that if you don't achieve something great by a certain age, you never will. Society often makes us feel that if we don't have our lives figured out by our 30s or 40s, we've somehow failed. But that belief couldn't be further from the truth. Success has no age limit, and failure is not the end. It's part of the journey. No one proves this better than Colonel Harland Sanders, the man who created one of the most famous fast food chains in the world, Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC. But here's the most shocking part. He didn't find success until he was 65 years old. At an age when most people are thinking about retirement, he was starting over. He had spent decades failing at different jobs, struggling with poverty, and losing business after business. By the time he was in his 60s, he had nothing. No stable job, no money, and no clear future. Most people in his situation would have accepted defeat, believing they were too old to start again. But not Sanders. He refused to give up. Instead, he took the one thing he had left, his secret fried chicken recipe, and turned it into a global empire. His story is a powerful reminder that failure is never final. It doesn't matter how many times you fall, how many doors close in your face, or how old you are. As long as you keep going, your dreams are still possible. Colonel Sanders' journey teaches us that success isn't about age. It's about persistence, passion, and believing in yourself, even when no one else does. So if you've ever doubted yourself, if you've ever thought it was too late to chase your dreams, let this story be your proof that it's never too late to start again. Early life struggles. Before Colonel Sanders became the face of one of the most famous fast food chains in the world, his life was filled with hardship, loss, and struggle. His journey was not one of overnight success, but of perseverance in the face of endless obstacles. To truly understand his triumph, we must go back to the very beginning, his childhood, where the first seeds of resilience were planted. A childhood marked by loss and responsibility. Harland David Sanders was born on September 9, 1890, in Henryville, Indiana, USA. He was the eldest of 3 children in a humble but loving household. His father, a hard-working farmer and butcher, was the backbone of the family, providing for them with honesty and dedication. His mother was a strong, caring woman who devoted herself to raising their children. However, life can be cruel, and at the young age of 5, Harland experienced a tragedy that would change his life forever. His father suddenly passed away. In an instant, the secure and happy life he had known was gone. With no stable income, his mother had no choice but to work long hours in a canning factory to support the family, leaving young Harlan to take on responsibilities far beyond his years. At an age when most children were playing and enjoying a carefree life, Harlan was forced to grow up overnight. He became the caretaker of his younger siblings, cooking meals, cleaning the house, and making sure they were safe. His small hands learned to knead dough, stir pots, and fry food, not for fun, but out of necessity. This was where his love for cooking was born, in the tiny kitchen of a struggling household where every meal was an act of survival. Working from childhood, the burden of poverty, Harlan quickly learned that life was unforgiving. His mother's salary was barely enough to keep food on the table, so by the time he was 7 years old, he started working to contribute to the family's survival. At an age when other children were going to school, he was out in the fields, doing back-breaking labor on a farm. By the time he turned 10, he was working full-time, earning a mere $2 a month. It was barely enough to buy anything, but it was better than nothing. The long hours in the scorching sun, the exhaustion and the unfair treatment of child laborers were harsh, but Harlan had no other choice. He wasn't just working for himself. He was working for his family. Despite being intelligent, school was a luxury he could not afford. His education took a back seat to survival, and as a result, he never had the chance to complete formal schooling. Life demanded work, not learning. However, this lack of education never stopped him. Instead, it forced him to develop real-world skills, adaptability, and a relentless work ethic, qualities that would one day make him a business icon. Running away from home, a desperate escape. As if poverty wasn't enough, another hardship soon entered Harlan's life. His mother remarried. At first it seemed like a chance for stability, but his new stepfather was abusive and cruel. Home, which should have been a place of comfort and love, became a place of fear and suffering. For years Harlan endured the mistreatment, but by the time he was 12 years old he couldn't take it anymore. One day he made a decision that would change the course of his life. He ran away from home. At just 12, with no money, no education, and nowhere to go, Harlan stepped out into the world, completely alone. Most children his age had the comfort of family, school, and a future ahead of them, but he had none of these things. All he had was his determination to survive, the beginning of a long, hard road. With nowhere to turn, Harlan started doing any job he could find to support himself. He worked as a farmhand, a streetcar conductor, and a laborer, taking whatever work was available just to get by. Each job was physically demanding and paid little, but he learned an important lesson. Hard work was his only way forward. Though life continued to be cruel, Harlan never let his hardships break him. He had already survived the loss of his father, poverty, child labor, and an abusive home. He had learned to be self-reliant at an age when most children still needed their parents for everything. Little did he know that this unyielding spirit, this ability to keep going no matter what, would one day turn him into one of the most recognizable and inspiring figures in the business world. His journey was just beginning. The road ahead would be filled with failures, disappointments, and more hardships, but Harlan Sanders was no ordinary man. He was a fighter. Years of hard work and failures. Harlan Sanders had already faced more hardships by the time he was a teenager than most people do in a lifetime. With no home to return to and no formal education, he had no choice but to keep moving forward, relying on his determination to survive. But if he thought his early struggles were tough, the years ahead would prove to be an even greater test of resilience. Drifting from job to job. With no stable career path, Harlan took on any job he could find. Over the years, he worked as a farmhand, a streetcar conductor, a railroad worker, an insurance salesman, a firefighter, and even a soldier in the U.S. Army. He would try one job, struggle to fit in, face setbacks, and move on to the next. Some of these jobs ended because of bad luck, while others ended because Harlan simply wasn't meant for them. He had a fiery personality and wasn't afraid to speak his mind, which often led to conflicts with employers. He was fired from multiple positions for insubordination, and no matter how hard he tried, he never seemed to find stability. At times he thought he was on the right path, only to be knocked back down. It was as if life was playing a cruel joke on him, teasing him with opportunities and then taking them away. No matter how hard he worked, success remained out of reach. By the time he was in his 30s, Harlan had worked more than 20 different jobs and failed at most of them. Many people would have given up, believing that they just weren't meant to succeed. But Harlan wasn't like most people. A new beginning, the first taste of success. At 40 years old, Harlan finally found what seemed like a real opportunity. He had saved up just enough money to open a small petrol station in Corbin, Kentucky. But unlike most petrol stations, he didn't just sell fuel. He started selling something much more special, his homemade fried chicken. Harlan had never forgotten his love for cooking, which had been with him since childhood. He knew he had a special talent for making delicious, flavorful food, and he saw an opportunity to turn that talent into something meaningful. At first, it was just a small side business. He would cook meals in the back of the station and serve travelers passing through town. But something surprising happened. People loved his chicken. Word spread quickly. More and more travelers stopped by, eager to get a taste of the crispy, perfectly seasoned fried chicken that Harlan made. For the first time in his life, it felt like things were finally going right. The petrol station became so popular that Harlan expanded his kitchen into a small restaurant, serving food to customers at all hours. His special blend of 11 secret herbs and spices made his chicken unlike anything else people had tasted before. It seemed like, after decades of struggle, he had finally found his path to success. Disaster strikes. Again, but just as quickly as things improved, life struck back with another crushing blow. The government built a new highway that completely bypassed Corbin, diverting traffic away from Harlan's petrol station and restaurant. Almost overnight, his business collapsed. The steady stream of travelers disappeared, and with them, his customers. He had put everything into his restaurant, believing it was his chance to finally build something of his own. But once again, fate had other plans. At 40 years old, he had climbed his way out of poverty, only to fall back down again. He was left with nothing, no business, no income, and no clear future. Fear seemed like a cruel pattern. Every time he got close to success, something went wrong. But Harlan Sanders was not a man who gave up easily. He had already survived too much to let another failure stop him. If he had to start over again, he would. He just needed to find another way. Turning point at age 62, Harlan Sanders had spent his entire life struggling. He had worked more jobs than he could count, failed at most of them, and had lost everything more times than he cared to remember. At 62 years old, he had no money, no business, and no stable future. Most people in his situation would have given up, accepted defeat, and lived out the rest of their years in quiet regret. But Harlan Sanders was not most people. Even in his darkest moments, he still held on to one thing: his belief in his fried chicken recipe. No matter how many times he had failed in business, his chicken had never failed him. Customers had always loved his cooking, and every time he served his special fried chicken, people kept coming back for more. That had to mean something. So, instead of giving up, he asked himself a new question. What if I don't need to open a restaurant? What if I can get other restaurants to sell my chicken for me? It was an idea that had never been done before. At the time, restaurants made their own food. They didn't buy recipes from outsiders. The concept of franchising was still new and uncommon, but Harlan saw an opportunity where others saw impossibility. A bold new idea: selling the recipe instead of the chicken. For most of his life, Harlan had tried to build businesses on his own. He had opened a petrol station, run small restaurants, and tried different ventures, all of which eventually failed due to circumstances beyond his control. But this time, he decided to take a different approach. Instead of opening another restaurant, he came up with a simple but radical idea. Instead of cooking and selling the chicken himself, he would sell the secret recipe to restaurant owners. In return, he would take a small percentage of their chicken sales as a commission. This idea was completely unheard of at the time. No one had ever tried to license a recipe and make money from it. Most restaurant owners made their own meals, their own way. Why would they pay someone just for a recipe? Harlan didn't know if his idea would work, but he knew one thing for sure: he had nothing to lose. At 62 years old, when most people were retiring, Harlan put on his famous white suit, packed up his pressure cooker, filled his car with ingredients, and hit the road. He was about to sell his dream, one door at a time, a journey of rejection. 1,009 doors slammed in his face. Harlan's plan was simple: drive from town to town, visit restaurant owners, cook his fried chicken for them, convince them to sell it in their restaurants. It sounded simple, but the reality was far more difficult than he imagined. Harlan traveled across America, stopping at every small-town diner, roadside restaurant, and family-run cafe he could find. He walked in, introduced himself, and told them about his special fried chicken recipe. He offered to cook it right then and there, for free, just to prove how good it was. But time after time, restaurant owners turned him away. Some laughed at him. Some thought his idea was ridiculous. Some simply weren't interested in changing their menu. Others didn't believe his recipe would make them more money. The rejections piled up. Million doors. No one said yes. 50 doors. Still nothing. 100 doors. Not a single success. Most people would have stopped there. Most people would have taken the hint and quit. But Harlan kept going. 100 doors. He was still hearing no. 800 doors. Still nothing. 1,000 doors. No one believed in him. By this point, many people would have called him crazy. How many people can face 1,000 rejections and still keep going? But Harlan wasn't looking for 1,000 people to believe in him. He was looking for just one. The first yes, a door finally opens. After 1,009 rejections, after traveling thousands of miles, after sleeping in his car and eating cheap meals just to survive. One restaurant owner finally said yes. One person finally gave him a chance. That first yes changed everything. It was proof that his idea could work. With one restaurant on board, others started paying attention. They saw how customers loved the chicken, how sales increased, how his secret blend of 11 herbs and spices made a difference. Slowly, more and more restaurant owners decided to try his recipe. One by one, Harlan Sanders started building something big. He had spent a lifetime failing, losing, and starting over. But at 62 years old, when most people would have considered their best years, behind them he was just getting started. The birth of KFC, from struggles to success. By the time Harlan Sanders was 65 years old, he had already endured more failures and setbacks than most people experience in a lifetime. He had worked over 20 different jobs, lost multiple businesses, and been rejected 1,009 times while trying to sell his fried chicken recipe. Yet despite everything, he never gave up. After finally convincing a few restaurant owners to serve his secret fried chicken recipe, he began to see a glimmer of success. Customers loved the crispy, flavorful chicken, and word started to spread. But Harlan knew that if he wanted to turn his fried chicken into something truly great, he needed to think bigger. He needed a way to grow, a life-changing partnership. During his travels, Harlan met a businessman named Pete Harmon, who owned a restaurant in Salt Lake City, Utah. Pete saw something special in Harlan, not just his chicken, but his unbreakable spirit and determination. He believed that Harlan's recipe had the potential to be more than just a popular dish. It could become a brand. Pete proposed an idea that would change Harlan's life forever. Instead of just selling his recipe to individual restaurant owners, why not create a brand that customers could recognize anywhere? Instead of Harlan traveling door to door, why not create a franchise system where restaurant owners could use his recipe under a single, recognizable name? Harlan loved the idea. He had spent his entire life trying to build something that lasted. This was his chance. And so in 1952, at the age of 65, Harlan Sanders and Pete Harmon officially launched Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC, the rise of a fried chicken empire. The first official KFC restaurant opened in Salt Lake City, Utah. Unlike most restaurants at the time, which focused on burgers or traditional American meals, KFC offered something different. Golden, crispy fried chicken made with Harlan's 11 secret herbs and spices. Quick service so customers didn't have to wait long. A unique brand identity, with Harlan himself as the face of KFC, dressed in his iconic white suit and black string tie. Pete Harmon helped Harlan streamline the franchise model, ensuring that every KFC location followed the same cooking process, used the same ingredients, and delivered the same great taste. And then, something incredible happened. Customers loved KFC. The unique taste, combined with Harlan's now famous image, as Colonel Sanders, made KFC an instant hit. More restaurant owners wanted in. The growth was explosive. In just a few years, more than 200 restaurants were serving KFC. By the time Harlan was 73 years old, KFC had over 600 locations across the United States and Canada. Colonel Sanders, the man who had once been broke and jobless at 62, was now a successful businessman and a millionaire. A dream finally realized. For the first time in his life, Harland felt like he had finally won. After decades of struggling, losing everything and being rejected, he had built something that was bigger than himself. KFC wasn't just a restaurant, it was a brand. People didn't just love the chicken, they loved the story behind it, and at the center of it all was Colonel Sanders, the old man in the white suit who refused to give up. But even though KFC was thriving, Harland's journey wasn't over. With success came new challenges, tough business decisions, and one of the biggest regrets of his life. Selling KFC and regret. By the time Harland Sanders was 73 years old, he had turned Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC, into a massive success. What had started as a single restaurant had grown into a franchise empire with over 600 locations across the United States and Canada. For the first time in his life, Harland was no longer struggling to make ends meet. He had gone from a poor, jobless man at 62 to a millionaire by 73, a transformation that few could have ever imagined. But success came at a cost. Managing a fast-growing business was exhausting. Harland was constantly traveling, overseeing operations and making sure every KFC restaurant maintained his high standards. He loved the cooking and customer experience, but he hated the business side of things. He was getting older, and the pressure of running an expanding franchise was becoming overwhelming. He was tired. He had spent his entire life fighting to succeed, and now that he had, he wanted to enjoy his remaining years in peace. Then, an opportunity arose, an offer that would change everything. The sale of KFC. In 1964, a group of investors approached Harland with a proposal. They wanted to buy KFC. They saw the potential for KFC to grow even bigger, far beyond what Harland had achieved on his own. They had the resources to expand internationally, open thousands of new locations, and turn KFC into a global fast food empire. At first, Harland was hesitant. KFC was his life's work, and he had built it from nothing. The thought of handing it over to someone else was painful, but after much thought, he finally made his decision. At 73 years old, Colonel Sanders sold KFC for $2 million, which would be worth around $20 million today. As part of the deal, Harland was allowed to remain the face of the company. He would still travel, appear in advertisements, and represent KFC to the world. But he no longer had control over how the company was run. At the time, the deal seemed like a good decision. He was financially secure, and he could finally take a step back from the pressures of business. But he had no idea what was coming next. Regret, watching his legacy change. Not long after selling KFC, Harland started noticing changes that made his heart sink. The new owners were focused on one thing: profit. They wanted to expand KFC as quickly as possible, which meant making adjustments to the business model. And one of the biggest changes? They altered his famous fried chicken recipe. To cut costs, the new owners began using cheaper ingredients and faster cooking methods. To Harland, this was a betrayal of everything he stood for. He had spent his entire life perfecting his 11 secret herbs and spices, making sure every piece of chicken was crispy, flavorful, and cooked with care. But now, he felt like his name was being attached to something that was no longer his. At first he tried to ignore it, but as the changes became more obvious, he couldn't stay silent. Colonel Sanders fights back. Harland began publicly criticizing KFC, even though he was still its official brand ambassador. He openly stated that the new version of KFC was not the same as his original recipe. He complained that the quality had gone down and that the food being served in KFC restaurants was terrible. In interviews, he didn't hold back. He told reporters that the new owners had ruined his chicken and that customers were no longer getting the true KFC experience. But no matter how much he protested, there was nothing he could do. He had sold the company, he had given up control, and now he had to live with that decision, a legacy that couldn't be erased. Even though Harland regretted selling KFC, the world still saw him as a legend. People loved the story of the man who refused to give up. They admired how, at 65 years old, he had built one of the biggest fast food brands in history. To them, he was still the Colonel, but deep down, Harland wished he had held on to KFC a little longer. He wished he had kept control so he could protect the quality and authenticity of his beloved fried chicken. Though he no longer owned KFC, he wasn't ready to stop working just yet. He still had a passion for food. So in his later years, he started another small restaurant, Claudia Sanders Dinner House, named after his wife. But KFC had already become too big to compete with. He knew he could never reclaim what he had lost. As the years passed, Harland remained a symbol of hard work and perseverance. He continued traveling, meeting KFC fans, and sharing his story until the very end. But his regret remained, a reminder that even the greatest successes can come with difficult choices. Legacy and final years, the man behind the brand. Even though Colonel Harland Sanders no longer owned Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC, his connection to the brand never faded. His face was still on every restaurant sign, every bucket of chicken, and every advertisement. He had become more than just a businessman. He was a living legend, a symbol of perseverance, and an inspiration to millions. But for Sanders, his story was more than just about fried chicken. It was about proving that failure is never the end. He had spent his entire life working, struggling, failing, and starting over, and even in his final years, he never stopped pushing forward, sharing his passion, and making a difference. Returning to his first love, cooking with heart. After selling KFC in 1964, Sanders was given a public relations role, meaning he would continue to represent the brand. He still traveled across the country, visiting KFC locations, meeting customers, and appearing in advertisements. But as time went on, he became increasingly frustrated with how the new owners were running the company. The recipe had been altered. His 11 secret herbs and spices were no longer being used exactly as he had intended. The new owners prioritized profit over quality, making decisions that compromised the taste and freshness of his beloved chicken. He openly criticized the company, even going so far as to say that the stuff they serve today is terrible. Despite his public disapproval, there was nothing he could do to change it. The company he had built was no longer in his hands. It was one of the biggest regrets of his life. So instead of dwelling on what he had lost, Sanders did what he always did. He started again. In 1968, alongside his wife Claudia, he opened a new restaurant called Claudia Sanders Dinner House in Shelbyville, Kentucky. This was his chance to serve food the way he believed it should be served, fresh, delicious, and made with care. Unlike KFC, which had become a massive fast food chain, Claudia Sanders Dinner House focused on home-style Southern cooking, serving dishes like fried chicken, biscuits, mashed potatoes, and country-style gravy. The restaurant quickly became popular, attracting both locals and travelers who wanted to experience the Colonel's cooking the way he originally intended it. Even in his late 70s and 80s, Sanders worked tirelessly in the restaurant, greeting customers, overseeing the kitchen, and ensuring every meal was made with love. He had no need for money at this point. He was already a millionaire. But money had never been his motivation. What truly mattered to him was the joy of cooking, the satisfaction of serving good food, and the pride of doing something right. Global icon, more than just a businessman. By the late 1970s, KFC had grown into something far beyond what Sanders had ever imagined. Thousands of restaurants had opened across the United States and around the world. KFC was now in over 50 countries, with plans for even greater expansion. The Colonel Sanders brand had become a global phenomenon, instantly recognizable wherever people went. Despite his regrets about selling the company, he was still immensely proud of what he had built. People didn't just see him as a businessman. To them, he was a symbol of hope, resilience, and never giving up. Throughout his later years, Sanders continued to travel the world, meeting KFC fans, visiting franchise locations, and sharing his story. He became one of the most beloved public figures in America, known for his warm personality, his sharp wit, and his unshakable work ethic. Even when his health started to decline, he refused to slow down. He kept working, traveling, and inspiring people, right up until his final days. The final goodbye, a legacy that lives on. In 1980, at the age of 90, Colonel Harlan Sanders passed away from leukemia. His funeral was a national event, attended by thousands of people, including business leaders, celebrities, and everyday fans who had been inspired by his story. He was buried in Louisville, Kentucky, in his iconic white suit and black string tie, the same outfit he had worn as he built his fried chicken empire. Even in death, he remained the face of perseverance, hard work, and never giving up. But while Sanders was gone, his legacy was just beginning. A legacy that continues to inspire today. KFC has over 27,000 restaurants in more than 150 countries, making it one of the biggest fast food chains in the world. His image is still everywhere, on billboards, commercials, and packaging. His story is still told in business schools, motivational speeches, and history books. His recipe, though modified, still serves millions of customers every day. But more than just chicken, more than just a business, Colonel Sanders left behind something far greater, an example of perseverance and determination. His life teaches us that age doesn't define success. He didn't succeed until he was 65. Failure is not the end. He was rejected 1,009 times before he found his first yes. Persistence is everything. He lost businesses, jobs, and money, but he never gave up. Passion leads to greatness. He truly loved cooking and serving people, and that passion built an empire. His story is a reminder to never stop believing in yourself, no matter how many times you fall. Because as Colonel Sanders proved, it's never too late to start again. And if you keep going, keep pushing, and keep believing, one day you might just build something great. Lessons from his life. The legacy of Colonel Sanders. The story of Colonel Harlan Sanders is more than just the tale of a man who created a global fast food empire. It is a story of resilience, determination, and the power of never giving up. Sanders' journey was filled with failure, rejection, and hardships, yet he never allowed those obstacles to stop him. He proved that success doesn't come easy, and that the most important thing in life is not how many times you fall, but how many times you get back up. His life offers powerful lessons that can inspire anyone, whether you are young, old, struggling, or just starting out on your own journey. Age is just a number. One of the most remarkable things about Sanders' story is when he found success. At 40, he started a business, only to have it fail. At 62, he was broke, jobless, and living out of his car. At 65, he started KFC and changed his life forever. Most people believe that if they haven't made it by their 30s or 40s, it's too late. But Colonel Sanders proved otherwise. Success doesn't have an age limit. Whether you're 25, 40, or 65, it's never too late to start again. 2. Failure isn't the end. Sanders' life was filled with failures. He worked over 20 different jobs and struggled at most of them. He lost his first business when a new highway rerouted customers away. He was rejected 1,009 times before finally getting his first restaurant partner. Most people would have given up after one major failure. Sanders kept going through thousands. His story proves that failure is not the end. It is just a step on the journey to success. No matter how many times you fail, you still have the power to turn things around. Persistence pays off. Imagine going door to door presenting your idea and hearing no 1,009 times. Most people would quit after 10 rejections, maybe 100 at the most. But Sanders didn't. He was told over 1,000 times that his idea wouldn't work. He slept in his car, traveled endlessly, and refused to give up. After 1,009 rejections, he finally got his first yes, and that changed everything. Success rarely happens overnight. It takes hard work, patience, and relentless determination. Sanders' story is a testament to the idea that if you keep pushing forward, eventually the right opportunity will come. Follow your passion. Despite all his failures, there was one thing Sanders always loved: cooking. As a child, he cooked to help his family survive. As a businessman, he poured his heart into making the perfect fried chicken. Even after selling KFC, he opened a new restaurant just so he could continue doing what he loved. His passion for food was the one constant in his life, and it was his passion that led him to success. No matter what you're facing, if you love what you do and keep working at it, you will find a way to succeed. Believe in yourself. Sanders was told over and over again that his idea would never work. Restaurant owners laughed at him. Investors rejected him. People doubted that a 65-year-old man could start something new, but he never doubted himself. He knew his fried chicken recipe was great, and he believed in his dream, even when no one else did. In the end, his self-belief turned his dream into reality. No matter how hard things get, never stop believing in yourself. If you have a dream, hold on to it, work for it, and never let anyone tell you it's impossible. A final thought: the power of never giving up. Colonel Sanders' life was not easy. He lost his father at 5, worked as a child laborer, failed at over 20 different jobs, started and lost multiple businesses, and was rejected over 1,000 times. But despite everything, he never stopped trying. And in the end, he built one of the most successful fast food chains in history. His story teaches us one simple but powerful lesson. No matter how many times you fail, as long as you keep going, success is still possible. So if you ever feel like giving up, remember Colonel Sanders. Remember his struggles, his failures, and his determination. And remember that if he could succeed at 65 years old, so can you. It's never too late to start again. Final message. No matter your age or struggles, success is still possible. Take action, push forward, and never give up. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to LMJ English. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss another powerful success story. Help us spread motivation by sharing this video with others. Here are 20 important words and phrases that were repeated throughout the story, along with their meanings and explanations. These words are useful for understanding perseverance, business, and success. Perseverance, meaning the ability to keep trying despite difficulties and failures. Resilience, meaning the ability to recover from hardships or setbacks. Determination, meaning the strong will to achieve something, even when it is difficult. Failure, meaning the state of not succeeding or something going wrong. Success, meaning achieving a goal or reaching a desired result. Rejection, meaning being refused or turned down. Hardship, meaning a difficult situation or period in life. Opportunity, meaning a chance to do something new or succeed. Passion, meaning a deep love or enthusiasm for something. Franchise, meaning a business model where individuals own and operate branches of a larger company. Entrepreneur, meaning a person who starts and runs their own business. Investment, meaning putting money or effort into something to get a future. Benefit. Legacy, meaning something left behind after a person's death, such as achievements or influence. Motivation, meaning the reason or drive to do something. Regret, meaning a feeling of sadness over a past decision or mistake. Expansion, meaning growth or increase in size, influence or numbers. Struggle, meaning a difficult effort to overcome obstacles. Reputation, meaning the way people see or think about a person or business. Inspiration, meaning something that encourages or motivates people. Comeback, meaning a return to success after a period of failure. Final thought. These words are not just vocabulary, they represent important lessons from Sanders' life. Which of these words do you relate to the most?